What's up, Fin fans? I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Grease, and everything looks so promising to start the game before the debacle kicked in, and everything just went downhill and snowballed on the Dolphins tonight.
Hey, I'm Zgonina. Tale of two halves tonight, that's for sure.
Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins, and the decision to wear black was not a coincidence from yours truly.
Fins up! It's the Dolphins Squad. Everything Miami Dolphins, every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from South Beach. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Sunshine, speed, and squad goals. The Dolphins Squad Show starts now.
All right, Miami, Jim Grieshaber, call me Grease. That's Jeff Zgonina, former Miami Dolphin. And, of course, that's Kyle Krabs, host of Locked On Dolphins on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Tonight's show is presented by Prize Picks on Crossover Thursday. Download the Prize Picks app today. Use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. And that is, of course, Crossover Thursday Prize Picks right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. We're live on YouTube right after the game. Then we upload, you download Spotify, Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, and, of course, Roku. And no matter where you're watching us or listening to us tonight, odds are you have a bottle in your hand or something, maybe even worse, after this game. And, Kyle, I hate to do this to you, man, and I know you're wearing black for a reason. I'm wearing black, too. So he didn't get the memo. He's on vacay. And you're in New York City where everyone wears black all the time. Go figure, right? But tonight it's apropos because the Dolphins season died tonight on that field. Any momentum that they had after that win over Atlanta, in which they put up the most points and allowed the fewest, all that momentum carries over into the first half tonight where they look clean, they look crisp, they're moving the ball all over the field, but they're fumbling the ball away, they're missing field goals, penalties on 4th and 1, and just every type of way to shoot themselves in the foot. The Ravens had 4 first downs in the first half, and they went in up 14-6 at halftime.
Yeah, it was I think there were 4 critical plays in the first quarter, and the Dolphins did not win a single one of them, but you could make an argument that they won the vast majority of the other plays in the first quarter of the game that really set the tone. There was the Taj Washington first career catch and subsequent fumble inside your own 20-yard line. Catastrophic mistake. Can't have it. Young player, first career catch. So I get it. There's growing pains involved there, but it's a catastrophic mistake against a well-coached team like Baltimore. Then you have the 4th down defensively in the red zone where they score a touchdown because the linebacker passes Mark Andrews off to the safety whose eyes aren't quite in the right spot, and he's late to feel it, and you got a wide open tight end on 4th down. So you lose that one. So that's 2. Then you have your own 4th down where you false start because the defensive end slides down, and then you move back 5 yards and you don't go for it, and you miss a 35-yard field goal. So that's 3. And then you had a 3rd and 4 in which Jalen Phillips has the opportunity to get Lamar Jackson down around the lower half of his body within the pocket as they have him caged in. He doesn't make the play. Lamar gets outside the pocket, and they have a 35-yard gain to set them up for the second score that they have in this contest. So those 4 plays in the first quarter alone, we talked about yesterday. It's a funny shaped ball. It bounces in weird ways. Which ones bounce your way? What can you will the ball to bounce your way? It didn't bounce your way once in those formative plays, and it was just kind of like, here we go again, another primetime showcase against a good team that's a lot better than their record indicated, and you just perpetually shot yourself in the foot again and again and again.
And Z, it's just something that we've talked about so many times this year with the turnovers, the interception, the fumbles tonight, the miscues, the missed field goal, the penalties, all those things that we thought this team had cleaned up coming into this game. And then with the whole world watching, with Dan Marino puking on himself in the suite, trying to, they kept showing the poor guy, leave him alone, man. It's just crazy. But it really was a game that the Dolphins, it should have been, 21-0 at halftime? Easily something like it, but they just weren't able to capitalize on anything. And then as a result, even though he only ran for 1 yard, they couldn't get Henry going at all in the first half. No run game for Baltimore. but Lamar Jackson looked great against the secondary. What a secondary to come back against. Wide open receivers all night long without anybody within 5 yards of them, and he just diced up the Dolphins all night. 204 yards and 4 touchdowns. Looked like he was playing high school ball out there.
Yeah, no, I mean, like you said, the first half, I thought we held them in check. They were, 109 of total offense to our, 226. I mean, you'd think you'd be up 21-0 with that, but I thought for sure we'd come out in the second half and get a quick 3 and out and start rolling again on the offense. And that didn't happen. That first drive after the half, was like pretty much a nail in a coffin, it seemed like, because we could not recover from that at all.
No, and speaking of recovering, Kyle, I thought that, the Ravens had really struggled, and you come off that win against Chicago, and in that first half offensively, they really couldn't get it going, but you give them the short field, you give them the easy touchdown. Andrews was wide open on a couple of those plays, and then in the second half, receivers are just wide open everywhere. The thing about the Dolphins that it's one thing to make those mistakes, right? It's one thing to keep shooting yourselves in the foot and giving them opportunity after opportunity, not capitalizing on yours. But I thought they didn't even come out to play in the second half. And the crowd booed, let them know it, everybody's leaving. Stephen Ross can't let this continue, right? I mean, this is something where they did not even look like they were competing in the second half of this game.
Yeah, well, I have the numbers up here. The Dolphins were one of 7 teams coming into week 9 who had a negative scoring differential in both the third quarter and the fourth quarter on the season through the first 8 weeks. Baltimore was one of those other teams, and that is no longer the case because they put the thumping on you in each one of those quarters, and they were -7 in the third quarter. So they got themselves turned around in that regard. But it's alarming to me that coming into this game, you had a 0-point differential in the first half of your first 8 games that you've played. And you had I'm doing the math on the fly, and that's always a dangerous thing. You were -41 in the second half coming into this game. And then this game gets away from you. You get outscored in it 14-0 in the second half again. You're -55 in the second half of football games this year. So what's going on there? And you want to give some credit to Todd Monken. I thought some of the schemed up shots that they had where they get Zay Flowers on an out and up against Dante Trader. That's a good call. And Monken did that to the Dolphins when these two teams played most recently in 23 as well. I think they had a very similar play where they had an out and up and they got a huge mismatch and a big explosive play. So that's disheartening. You give some credit to the coaching staff in Baltimore, but you also look at the Dolphins coaching staff and what isn't happening. And this is a big enough sample size across 9 games. You're -55 in the second half of football games. So I don't know what adjustments, and I know everybody kind of has their own opinions of how real halftime adjustments really are, but it seems like teams get in and have a chance to kind of reassess how a game is unfolding, and they're taking advantage of what they see in the first half against Miami, and the Dolphins haven't been able to all season long make those positive changes.
Z, in almost 30 years in this league, man, when you look at numbers like I'm about to tell you, and I want you to just digest this for a second, right? First downs, 18-17 Baltimore, right? Total yards, 338 to 332. If I'm reading these numbers and I'm not telling you the score, you know what I'm saying? 6 yards per play, 5.4. You outpassed them 245 to 188. They outrushed you 150 to 87. Penalties, 5 for 56, 5 for 45. Time of possession within 3 minutes. These numbers are virtually identical. Shout out to my guy, Mike Goldberg. Virtually identical, right? And it's 28-6. I mean, that to me, in and of itself, it's like, I mean, I know it's a tale of two halves and the Dolphins dominated the first half. They're still down 8 points. But when you look at those numbers and they're that even in an NFL game, it's so rare to have a blowout like this in a game like that, man. It just, what are your thoughts as you digest those numbers and you think about what actually happened out there on the field tonight?
Well, I would say it was a turnover issue, because that's what it comes down to now, with those kind of numbers. Exactly. That's what it is. You have nice drives going and you cough the ball up, and it's a drive killer. And you have your missed field goal. To me, that's a turnover. It's a drive killer, That's what it is. Again, you read me those numbers, though. I'm thinking it was a walk-off field goal at the last second of the game.
Yeah, right.
And, but then you got to look at the turnover thing, the turnover battle, and if it's lopsided, then it's a blowout.
Yeah, and Kyle, when you think about dominating the first half but still, trailing 14-6, at halftime and all the things that went wrong as you're actually playing well, and then the way that you come out in the second half and just get worked all over your home field in front of the crowd and everybody's leaving early. Stephen Ross has to do something about this, right? I mean, we're on the Mike McDaniel watch at this point. We talked about it earlier this week with the trade, actually yesterday, with the trade deadline coming up Tuesday, and guys maybe fighting for their jobs of staying in South Florida for the winter and not being traded out of here. We joked about it. But, I mean, after a game like this with a 10-day break before the Bills come into town, that's usually when things like that happen. And right now, I mean, I know Stephen Ross isn't going to get much sleep tonight, but some heads might roll as a result of this game. And if the timing is indicative, like we've talked about in the past, and when you have that long break in between games, this would be the time to do it, right? If they're going to make a change, it would be now.
Yeah, it's either now or after the international game in Spain against the Commanders are the two kind of logical, because they have the bye after that. But I think this is a good litmus test of what the insiders have been saying for the last probably 6 weeks is Stephen Ross doesn't want to make a change. The results on the field need to be better, but the way that Stephen Ross changes his mind is if the stadium's empty and if the team lays down on him and if the fans get rowdy, right? Well, the fans were loud with their displeasure and then they all left early. When you got the broadcast acknowledging, hey, there's 10 minutes left in the game. If you leave now, you're going to be the middle of post-game traffic because everybody packed up and went home. Yeah. And it looked like there was a pretty good representation of Baltimore fans in the stands in the first place. So that, to me, a game like this, you were the only show in town tonight. Primetime, standalone game, opening game of week 9 of the season. You had all the league's eyes on you, and your showcase was 28-6. Fans are booing their heads off, and everybody goes home early. We'll see just how much heavy lifting that win last Sunday against Atlanta does, because I think you could look at the full body of work now at 2-7 and a couple of really ugly losses to the AFC North. I would not dismiss anything. I don't know if I'm predicting something or not, but I think this is a good test of what the insiders said was going to be the threshold that needed to be crossed for Stephen Ross.
Yeah, no doubt. And the one thing I do want to bring up, and if you could read lips every time they showed the fans in the crowd, there were a lot of F-bombs, like what is going on out there, right? And it was just crazy. Every time they look in the crowd, these fans are literally like, paper bags are coming out. It's crazy. But Lamar Jackson becomes the 4th player in NFL history to throw at least 4 touchdowns against the Dolphins in 3 games. Tom Brady did it 5 times, Drew Bledsoe and Josh Allen, 3 apiece. And the one thing I want to ask you about, Z, is that call on Ollie Gordon, because I thought that was crap, the tripping call. They look like they're getting momentum back. That, we can talk about penalties, and bad penalties are bad penalties, but man, I don't know about that one. And that wiped out, a 36-yard catch by Waddle. That was a bad call.
Very bad. To me, that was a cut block. And again, you can cut guys. That's allowed. You know what I'm saying? He started up high and went down. He slipped a little bit, it looked like, but it's a cut block. You know what I'm saying? No one else was engaged. It wasn't a high-low. That's a penalty. To me, that shouldn't have been called at all. That's just a normal block by a running back, really.
Yeah, and Ollie Gordon getting into it on the sidelines, Kyle, with Coach after that, and just a tough call on him. What
was that about? Studesville coming off, giving him the lip service, and
dude,
he tripped. He very clearly trips. And you're going to rip into him, and Ollie gives it back to him. I dig the passion. I dig the enthusiasm to play. And again, that's for me at this point in the season. I'm looking at guys like number 31. I'm looking at guys like number 11, Dante Trader on defense, and getting a tackle in a short yardage situation with Derrick Henry to force a 3rd down. Like, those are the things for me, like, okay, what am I going to cling to here? Because if I sit here and I just put all of my worth in the result of the game, guys, I'm not going to make it to the end of the season. I'll tell you that right now. So I appreciated that from Ollie, the animated passion about the call and the execution, and what was very clearly like egregious call that was made on that play. I thought it was totally ridiculous. So I appreciate Ollie being caring as much as he does. Guys that care at 2-6 when you're losing, in the middle of a season that's been really hard. No, I think there's young guys there that you keep that energy, you keep that same energy, throughout your career, and it's going to do good things for you.
Yeah, and he got the ankle rolled up later, had to leave the game. Looks like he's going to be okay. But your guy, Chop Robinson, who we talk a lot about, leaves the game. He's got the concussion. Rasul Douglas leaves with an injury. Just the injuries just continue to devastate this team, Kyle.
It's the concern was depth, right? It's like you had certain spots on the roster that you really couldn't afford to take a bunch of injuries. Feels like every year the Dolphins have a position room that just gets totally snake bit every year. This year it's the cornerback room, right? Where they finally, hey, we get a break. We get Jason Marshall back on the 53-man roster this week after he went out in week 3 with a hamstring injury. And the corresponding move is, oh, that's cool. Glad that Jason Marshall's back. Now Rasul Douglas is going to have a toe injury. So you really can't afford this kind of attrition in that spot. But that's the hand that you're being dealt right now. And get a chance to see some more young guys play. You got Storm Duck back last week. He didn't even make it through the first game back, and now he's on season-ending injured reserve, so he's going to be out as well. So it's an indicator to me of the personnel, right? I look at this game and how it played out, and I have plenty of gripes with the coaching, whether it's the 4th down shot to Achane in the red zone, is that's your best call, is shocked on Achane against a 6'4" safety who's the best safety in football. And just about every safety that's on social media tweeted about and said, they called a fade to the running back? Really? So the guys across the league kind of had their eyebrows go up with that call. But I think this game to me, and then like the injury stuff that Miami's dealing with right now, is the biggest indictment of the personnel and the depth of the roster. That you just couldn't afford stuff like this, and you have it. And that's fueling the way that this season's going for Miami, unfortunately.
And really one of the most telling things I saw or heard all night, and we're up against the break, so we'll pick this up on the other side, but Mike McDaniel coming out of the locker room after halftime, interviewed on the field. The girl did the best she could to put a little bit of a positive spin on it, but Mike talked about playing 2 opponents, meaning the Ravens and themselves, and that was really the quote of the night. So we'll pick that up on the other side. It's your Dolphin Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Greasy Kyle, post-game edition. Wish it was better tonight, but man, 28-6, and it could have been a lot worse as the Ravens continue to get better. And we thought that 7.5-point line was just way out of whack, but turns out it was way out of whack in the wrong direction. We'll take a quick break, come back, pick that up on the other side with what Mike said about playing 2 opponents. The trade deadline's coming up, and someone's going to be out of here, if not more than one person, we think now. Kyle will break that down for us as well, and then we'll look ahead to the Bills in 10 days and who will be here and who won't. All kinds of things still to come on your Dolphin Squad Show post-game edition. We will be right back after these words. And I get a chance to tell you about our friends at Prize Picks. You and I make decisions every day, don't we? But on Prize Picks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of this sports season. Whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both, there's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, Prize Picks, the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats, and if you get them right, less on the Dolphins usually, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere Prize Picks operates: California, Texas, Georgia, even more. So I've been using Prize Picks football Sundays, NBA tip-offs, and more. It keeps every game exciting. Action on the action, like my favorite players, Mahomes, Steph Curry, to see how my predictions can play out. The new Stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph's points, threes, and assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineup from a loss. So what you going to do, brother? You're going to download the Prize Picks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup with Prize Picks. It is good to be right on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. There we have it. It's Grease, it's Z, it's Kyle, and man, oh man, if you had the over tonight, you were toast. If you had the Dolphins had been playing pretty well, at least against the spread, right? And coming off that Atlanta game, they were 4-2 in their last 6 against the spread, 2-4 overall. But of course, the wins are all that matter. But Kyle, we said it going into the break. Mike McDaniel came out of the locker room and said you can't be playing against 2 opponents. and find any way to win. And that was exactly what we saw tonight. So I'll give Mike this. He's been very self-aware and very aware of the issues that have faced this team. Last week, we thought might have been a game that saved his job, saved everything moving forward. If they were able to continue with the momentum, which they did, at least in the first half, they're moving the ball, playing well on defense, but the penalties and the stupid mistakes just killed them tonight. But that whole notion of playing against two opponents, man, what does that mean to you? And how much do you feel like that's been the story of the season for Miami so far?
I mean, I think that those critical plays in the fourth quarter that we talked about earlier, that's kind of like a microcosm for me of like this era of the team too often. I mean, they did good things. They had 83 rushing yards in the first half, right? They moved the ball really well. But too many unforced errors. My favorite tradition that's happening with these post-game squads is I hear and read something that somebody said at a presser, and I have a nuclear meltdown over it, and you're about to get another one. But talking about unforced errors, this false start on 4th and 1 with Larry Borum. Tua, comes from David Furonis, who's on the beat. Tua asked about the 4th and 1 false start by Larry Borum, said the Ravens fans at the Dolphins home stadium were making it difficult for the Dolphins offense to run with the cadence.
What is wrong with
them? They talk about sound bites and set points and all of these things for the timing of the motions and where the skill players at the motion with the snap and this, that, the other thing. And nobody else deals with this. I'm sorry. Like, for all of the good and all the good things that are happening, you're getting guys that are watching the game with the Prime Vision, which is the All-22, and you get these rave reviews for play design, and I think it's legitimate, right? I think a lot of what the Dolphins do from a play design perspective, particularly in the run game, it is really creative. It's where you see Mike McDaniel at his best. But the extra, I'll use the word stuff, but it's not the word that I want to use, family-friendly programming here. So all the extra stuff that has to come with it, with your motions and your sound bites for your cadence and this and that. At your home stadium, you got noise from Ravens fans in your home stadium that makes it hard to operate. We've already heard about how hard it is for this offense to travel because they don't really have the same pliability to do home and away splits for their shifts and motions because all their plays are so interwoven together. That's what Teron Armstead told me when I went on his podcast a month ago, right? And now you're at your home stadium and it's maybe 50. I don't know what the split was, but say it's 50-50. That's a bad show out for Dolphins fans at a home game. But if you got 50% Ravens fans in there and they're loud enough that they're making it hard for you in a critical down and distance, like this happens every time they go on a road against a good opponent. Apparently now it happens at home when you're playing a team that has some fans to travel for the game and is a quality opponent that's well coached. And it's really frustrating to justify all of this extra that has to come with what's really creative run scheme design for me.
I give you all the credit in the world for keeping it together while you try to explain that load of crap that we're hearing at Z. I mean, I see Z's face. I have to get your reaction to that, Z.
Well, I'm laughing because I coached on a team that we literally had noise for home games for our offense because there's so many visiting fans that would come to our stadium that we were playing an away game every weekend. I mean, we were a bad team, but, we had noise. We had the speakers blaring when the offense was out there because the fans that were coming were going to be that loud. And it's sad. It's completely sad. But it is, at some point you got to figure it out and not have to have all that, codes and this and that. You just got to play football. Because, you can rinky-dink everything up and look pretty and everything. But at the end of the day, going back to week 2 or 3 when we said, stick your helmet under a guy's chin, you got to do that. You got to come off the ball and stroke someone. You can't just sit there and try to outmaneuver someone. It's not a chess match.
Kyle's got the fancy glassware there for the post-game cocktail, or it's not even a cocktail. That's just straight.
No, it's a straight liquor tonight.
Straight liquor after that.
Bourbon tonight.
Straight bourbon. I mean, at least I hope it's good bourbon. At least, I mean, that'll put a little bit of a smile on your face. But it just is, Mike McDaniel's going to land on his feet somewhere. There's no doubt. As an offensive coordinator, he's elite, and he's going to have an elite job, and he's going to have great success as an offensive coordinator when he's done coaching here. It's just a matter of when. And as much as I hate to feed into the stereotypes, Kyle, I'm going to feed into the stereotypes. This team, everybody talks about the Dolphins needing a disciplinarian. How much does that even matter in this day and age when Lamar Jackson had asked to have the ping pong tables and even the TVs removed from the Ravens locker room because guys weren't focusing? They're on their phones at halftime. It's a different generation. We'll get Z's perspective having coached these guys the last few years as opposed to the guys he came into the league with. But do you buy into that notion that a disciplinarian can come in and turn this thing around, or is it as simple? We've talked about the culture, but is it just discipline, do you think, at this point?
I think that's the low-hanging fruit to buy on. I think this entire program needs to be inspected, and I would love to hear Z's perspective without burying anybody that he's worked with, but like, what made the great coaches that he played and worked with, what made them great coaches, right? Because that for me is, you're playing the ping pong game where we have a guy on this end of the spectrum and then we fire that guy. And now let's go get a guy on the other end of the spectrum with the exact same thing, whether it's an offensive coach or a defensive coach or a player-friendly coach or a disciplinarian, and back and forth and back and forth. And from how I assess what the successful programs are across the NFL, a lot of great head coaches are great because of what they can do from a leadership and an administrative standpoint and the delegation standpoint and their people skills to create good coaching staffs around them. And that has a lot less to do with, I want to hire this guy to bring a modern 21st century offense to Miami, or I want to hire this guy because the Patriots defense is awesome because they won the Super Bowl against the Rams, right? Like that, to me, doing a hiring or firing or doing an assessment off of a singular personality trait or a singular quality on what side of the ball you coach, or whether or not you're laid back for the coaches, or you're going to put a stick up the players' rear ends and get them fired up every single week. Like I feel like it doesn't encapsulate what it feels like Miami needs, because they've been playing this game with themselves since Stephen Ross bought the team, right? It was Tony Sperano, and he was a real fiery guy. And then it was Joe Philbin, and he's real ho-hum and intellectual and laid back and relaxed. And then they move on from Joe Philbin, and Dan Campbell's the interim, right? And he lights a fire under the team. But then they move on, and they get the recommendation from Peyton Manning that Adam Gase is the intellectual you need to run your offense. So you make that hire. But then he was a little bit too quirky and a little soft-spoken. So then you go get fiery Brian Flores, and Brian Flores is too tough on the players. So then you go get Mike McDaniel, who's all laid back again, right? Like that's the journey that we've been on. And I'd love to hear Z talk about the common themes between successful coaches. But to me, it's like, no, I don't think you just need to say, hey, we need a disciplinarian here. You need somebody with administrative skill set and a robust book of connections to build a great coaching staff here. And then they need to be given time to instill a program and not take shortcuts, because I think that's where this version of the Dolphins lost their way.
Z, that's a lot to chew on for you. What do you think of all that?
Well, first, Kyle, thanks for the little dig about the Patriots beating the Rams in the Super Bowl. I appreciate that. But moving forward,
no. The second time they did it, before the Dolphins hired Flores.
Oh, they didn't play the LA.
Yeah,
Rams.
the second time.
So
the one that got Jared Goff out of
I would
LA.
I got scars. Sorry. No, you don't need a disciplinarian that's gonna come down and iron fist. Guys ain't gonna perform for someone like that. When you bring a new coach in, a new head coach in, you want someone that guys are gonna respect. Either he did something good somewhere else, or he's got a track record of being a coordinator that guys played for, guys enjoyed playing for. As a coach, you have to always be like, have a direction and stick with it and never waver from it, always be consistent. But you also got to be respectful to these guys, because this day and age, these guys are brought up differently. It ain't the old days where you can, MF a guy into the ground and he's going to respond. You MF a guy on the ground now, you get, coach, you can't talk to me that way. And he's going to walk away. And there's nothing you can do about it. So you bring a coach in, you go with someone with respect, is going to treat everybody the same. Not going to like put some guys up on a pedestal and some guys not, and you'll get success out of it. But again, if you keep like bringing this guy in and that guy in, and he's wishy-washy and he's not showing any passion or anything, guys are just going to look at it and say, okay, whatever, dude. We'll wait for the next guy. But if you bring someone in that is going to like iron fist it in any building, I don't think it's going to work anymore. Because look at the coaches now. I don't think Harbaugh is an iron fist up in Baltimore. I think he's honest and true, and he's got he's passionate about what he does and everything. But I don't think he's MFing anybody and belittling anybody. And he's not sitting there and kissing their ass either. He's hard on them. He demands. He's probably very demanding. Because he's a Harbaugh. I know Jim's like that. I don't think Jim's like MFing anybody anymore. I think he's professional about it and he brings something to the table. Andy Reid ain't. I know. I'm talking about people that have a quarterback and have good teams, but there's a reason why. There's a reason why guys want to go play there. Belichick was probably a disciplinarian, but he had Tom Brady, who was a disciplinarian too. So I think towards the end, Tom kind of took that over. But guys knew they were to get a Super Bowl, so they went there. They went there for the 1 or 2 years to get their ring and then go retire, So, I don't think like a guy that's, you don't know what you're getting every day, the guys are going to follow at the end.
Z, I want to pick that up with you on the other side. We're up against the break. Kyle's got a spot for Mazda in just a second, but I want to pick that up with you on the other side, Z, and ask you how you do reach this generation of players as opposed to the previous generations who you could do those things with. It's a whole different art right now, and I feel like it's more within the locker room than ever before, more player leadership than ever before, because you get a guy like Mahomes or someone like Travis Kelce on your team, and players follow them more than they listen to a coach these days, for sure. So this is your squad show, 28-6 the final. The Ravens destroyed the Dolphins on their home field tonight. Half the stadium's empty by the end of the game. Dolphins dominate the first half. They're still down 8. And in the second half, they flat out didn't show up. Trade deadline's coming up Tuesday. Bills in 10 days. We'll talk about what might happen between now and then as well. It's the Squad Show on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Mazda crafts cars for those who do more than simply move. Mazda delivers confidence with every ride, with more IIHS Top Safety Pick Plus awards than anyone else as of August 2025. From footwork to breath work, athletes usually sweat all the details, maybe not necessarily like ball security in scoring territory or running the right routes, but it's neither here nor there. Mazda brings the true attention to detail with how they craft every model. You can feel the Japanese craftsmanship in every detail, from the metallic accents to the Napa leather upholstery. You can make everyday drives feel like anything but, from smooth handling to intuitive controls. Like NFL players, we sweat every detail, because when you make every move count, impossible becomes irrelevant. Mazda, move and be moved.
There we go. All right. Move and be moved. Who's going to be moving by Tuesday, and who's going to be moving by the Bills game in 10 days? There's a perfect segue coming right out of the commercial for you, Kyle. But while you chew on that, Z, I just wanted you to finish your point a little bit on that. How do you reach? I mean, you were coaching the Cowboys defensive line last year. How do you reach this generation of players as opposed to the previous generations? Because in the old days, a guy like Bill Parcells, grab you by the face mask, disciplinarian. Vince Lombardi, forget about it. He wouldn't last 5 minutes in this league. Jimmy Johnson. You think about the guys who really have won in this league, and they were Bill Walsh. They could talk all they want about how smart Bill Walsh was, but he was to play for. You know what I mean? So the most successful coach is Don Shula in the history of this league, for the most part, ruled with an iron fist. Now a guy like Andy Reid comes along and he's going, hey, Travis is a competitive guy. I don't mind if he screams in my face on the sideline. Don Shula never would have said that. Bill Parcells, Jimmy Johnson never would have said that, right? So a completely different breed of player and a completely new generation needs a completely different breed of coach. The participation trophies, the no bullying, all the little things that have happened along the way, whether or not you agree with those things overall in society or not, they permeate and they work their way even into a league like the NFL. So How do you reach these kids who I just want to call them sensitive? I don't know what else to do.
Yeah, I mean, it is a different, league compared to when I played. But like you talk about, Travis and Coach, yelling at each other sidelines. I never minded when a guy yelled at me, if it's respectful. And I yell at guys, but it's respectful. I don't like put someone down like in the past, like I don't mind an MF every once in a while in any part of my life because I'm going to learn from it and become a better player, a better coach, a better, father, friend, or whatever. So every once in a while, I don't mind being checked. And as a player, you don't mind being checked if it's warranted. You know what I'm saying? It's not just because some hothead's going to do it. And I've been with coaches that just like to yell, they yell. And it's like, really, dude, what are you yelling about? But if you yell, the correct way and you don't belittle someone, you're all right. And the one thing I did was I tried never to belittle someone, not someone's manhood. I attacked a problem, not a person. So what I attacked on the tape was a problem that needed to be corrected. I never attacked a person. Once you can make it personal with me or anybody, it's a whole new ball game. And here we go. You come down my trail, we're gonna go now. I'm not gonna fist fight you, but I'm gonna verbally assault you now. Because once you open the door, it's over. So with a player, you can't do that. You can always attack a problem. And I've always stated that from my first meeting to my last meeting. I always say, hey guys, I'm attacking a problem on the tape. I'm not attacking you personally. Trust me. Now, if you make it personal with me, okay, I'll make it personal with you. But I will never, you never want to go get personal with one of these guys, no matter back then or now. That's fine. It's a fine line with some coaches, and some guys can't do it. They'll go at you personally, and it never ends out good.
How close has it come in your coaching career? I know in your playing career it was a little bit different, and you played with guys like Zach Thomas, Jason Taylor, real leaders in the locker room and on that team as well as yourself. But how close have you seen it come, or has it come with you in recent years while you've been coaching to just blowing up a whole team with those interactions that you're talking about?
Well, for me personally, it never happened. It never, like I said, I know my boundaries.
What about teams you coached on, like other coaches, head coaches, coordinators?
I've seen a few, but again, it was not like personal. Practice field, a couple little yellings back and forth, but never come into fist fights. I've heard about it throughout the league, but never me being in a building or in a room ever seeing a coach and a player have it out like that, pushing, shoving, fist fighting or anything.
Okay, and Kyle, I'm just wondering, and I know you have a real firm grip on the pulse of this team. Do you feel like the players truly respect Mike McDaniel? And with those quotes in the comments that we've seen, I mean, just the post-game press conferences from Mike and from Tua, the things that they've said and the way that they've said them, even though they're very different, I'm just wondering how many guys are really following these two and saying, hey, you're going to get me there after all this. I just don't see that happening.
I think the adversity of this season, and Tua said something to Ryan Fitzpatrick in the pregame broadcast for Thursday Night Tonight, talked about him and Mike having to have some challenging conversations. And I'm paraphrasing what Tua said there, but he kind of alluded to, yeah, this season's not been all gravy, right? This has not been an easy season. There's been difficult conversations that have had to be had. And I think you see that. And I think that relationship is strained. And I think as you very clearly have these guys as the leaders in the forefront of the team, and the results continue to not come, I'm sure that's a moving target every week as far as where people are. I think it was just 4 days ago we were off the heels of the Atlanta game and said, hey, we really admire how this team's still playing really hard for Mike McDaniel. So I think the vast majority of the team likes Mike, and it's kind of weighing out that contrast of how much of that is the problem versus how much of it is we just have a lot of young players playing, right? It's like we're on pace for more than 3,000 snaps from the rookie class this year. It's a monumental amount of volume for guys that haven't played. And then you have guys like Taj Washington, who has this critical error early in the game today, who caught his first career pass. He's active, I think, for the second time in his NFL career as a second-year player. So you have a lot of that kind of confounds it too. But that's where, when you're doing the assessment of the team and where it's at and where it's going, you look at what is the player development of those players like. And I think there's some good things to see with the guys that have played a lot of snaps thus far this season. But is it enough in this kind of critical juncture where you have to, this is not just a 2026 conversation. Like the 2025 conversation, for all intents and purposes, is over. You're 2-7. It's not just a 2026. It's a, hey, we're coming around to a point where we're going to be cycling up what our cap space flexibility looks like, because we're continuing to offload big contracts, and we are going to be at a point after next year where you can transition away from the Tua Tagovailoa contract, and you're going to have a marquee draft pick this year. What's that decision look like? And that's not just a 1-year conversation. That's like the future of the franchise. So as you assess that, I think you have to weigh the current here and now, but you also have to ask, what is the trajectory of the players on the roster, and what is your confidence level in the development of young players? That's where a team like the Rams with Sean McVay has been phenomenal, right? They won the Super Bowl. They had the crash out year where they won 5 games or 4 games in 2021. And then Aaron Donald retires, and half their depth chart was day 3 draft picks and UDFAs. They won 10 games that year because the players developed throughout the course of the season. And that's what, as we go from here, I'm less worried about players punting on Mike per se as I am what is the trajectory of those players because of how big of a thumbprint they have on the product you're putting on the field every Sunday.
How much does the organization and really, like I joke and say the Miami Cardinals, there's no organization in the history of sports, maybe the Clippers, that's been more inept than the Arizona Cardinals. I used to cover them, I know, but when I used to host the network postgame show, that's a long time ago, but what a terrible organization, and they've been consistently terrible. And they got Kurt Warner to go there, who you know well, and they drafted Fitzy, and they let Anquan Bolden go after they go to a Super Bowl. Just disaster after disaster. But the Dolphins, Z, when you're a player in an organization, and this is not Mike McDaniel's fault, you have a lawsuit from your ex-head coach, you have tampering charges costing you draft picks. Those aren't the coaching staff's fault, man. I mean, when you're a part of an organization that literally has done everything it can to run itself into the ground, how does that even feel to be a part of all that, and to know that, so many of those things are out of your control, but it really has hurt you and cost you overall?
Again, I think I said it before, stuff like that as a player and really as a coach, you can't worry about it because you didn't cause it.
But you're still a human though, right?
I get it. I left the place for 4 years. We had an owner that was there, not there, lawsuits everywhere. There's a new lawsuit every week, it seemed like, or something was going astray in Washington. At the point, so at a point you get like numb to it, and you just, that's got nothing to do with what's going to happen on this third down, because you just got to focus on football. You can't focus about the stuff like outside the building, or on the other side of the building, or upstairs. I only can worry about what is down here in my present. I can't worry about the outer space. If you start worrying about the outer face, like the fans do, like we're talking about it, you're not going to win anything. You look even worse, because now you're worrying about stuff you cannot control. Control the controllables. That's what you hear all the time, and all the, a lot of these, pressers, right? Your players saying it, coaches saying it, and there's a truth. I can't worry about what the owner's doing or what the GM's doing or who's tampering with what. I can't worry about that. All I can worry about is my job and how I'm going to help this team win.
Yeah, and you've said this many times on the show before, Z, where NFL is definitely not for long, and everybody's playing for their job and coaching for their job every single day except the owner, right? So when you let those distractions seep in, that's when things go badly. And you think it's bad when you're losing. It goes from bad to worse, and you find yourself out of the league in some cases, right?
Oh, without a doubt. That's what you say. You can control what you do. And sometimes even that doesn't, because the guy upstairs, the GM, whoever's got final say of the roster, he controls your life, really, at the end of the day. Unless you have guaranteed money out the yin-yang. But, like for a guy like me, it was up to the GM and the head coach about if I was working the next day, every day, because I was expendable.
That's crazy. That's Jeff Zgonina, Call him Z, Kyle Krabs. I'm Jim Grieshaber. Call me Grease. Dolphins Squad Show 28-6, the final. I mean, Tua threw for 261 yards. Achane had over 100 yards of total offense. Waddle had 6 for 82 in this game. The ball was spread around to all kinds of receivers. Looking at the numbers, it's crazy to think it was a 28-6 game. The team stats, everything but the turnovers. 3 for the Dolphins, an interception and 2 fumbles. None for the Ravens. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson just carved him up, and he looked really good coming off that injury and got a lot of help from the Dolphins secondary, which was completely confused and all over the place all night long. But again, in the first half, the defense played well. And Kyle just takes another swig of that bourbon as we hit the home stretch here on your Dolphins Squad Show. We're not taking a break on the live YouTube show, but we're going to throw in a little spot break right here for the audio version. Just hang with us for 1 second. We're going to wrap it up right here on the Squad Show. There we go. Simple. And here we are to wrap it up. And, you know, Kyle, I just gave you some of those numbers. Achane, 14 carries, 67 yards. And then the 6 catches for 39 yards out of the backfield. And then, obviously, Waddle had another big night, 6 for 82, had a 36-yarder called back on a terrible penalty. Otherwise, he would have had another 100-yard game. But the one thing you notice I'm not saying, 2 of 25 of 40, 261, and all those numbers I'm talking about, what's the one thing missing? 0. No touchdowns. 2 field goals tonight and a missed field goal, but no touchdown. They were in the red zone time and time again in the first half, or just knocking on the door of the red zone in scoring position over and over and over. No touchdowns.
Yeah, Warren Sharp had the stat of the game for me, which was both teams had 4 trips inside the opposing team's 25-yard line. So 4 trips apiece. Baltimore got 28 points and the Dolphins got 6.
And Henry got his 100 yards on 19 carries tonight. Lamar was 18 of 23 for 204, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions for him. And no Ravens receiver had more than, 60 yards, maybe 64. Zay Flowers was their leading receiver. But, you know, you get a guy like Lamar back, it's going to be a boost, Z. It's going to be a big-time, shot in the butt for the Ravens. They got the win over the Bears coming into this. Then you get Lamar back, and this team all of a sudden looks like it can go on a run. And we thought it might be the other way around with the Dolphins building momentum. So it's really frustrating. Everybody's pissed off. Nobody's happy. Kyle's drinking, wearing black. I'm wearing black. We're all this, it really is crazy to think of last week versus this week and we're right back where we were after the Cleveland game. So I hate to keep asking you this after every loss because we know the answer, but to pick themselves up from a game like this, you have 10 days now, right? So this one festers, it stings, it hurts. I know you say you have to forget about it, but what does it look like? What does it feel like as a player right now, knowing that the trade deadline's Tuesday, knowing that your coach might get fired, knowing that the stench of this game is going to last almost 2 weeks before you can get back on the field and do something about it, which is all your mindset is as a player, right? You just want to get back out there and do something, but now you got this long wait and all these things hanging over your head.
Yeah, it's a tough spot. I mean, I ain't gonna lie, there's probably some cats in the locker room hoping they get traded,
Oh, yeah.
That's just how the league is. Hopefully I get traded, go somewhere that's going to make a run, and some might even ask to be traded. You see it every year, especially an older guy who wants to go make a run, they might ask to be traded, to a contender. So, we'll see on Tuesday at 4:00, who's going to play against the Bills, and who's going to coach against Bills. Because like we talked about earlier, you have 10 days now. You could make a change there. You hope not, but I mean, this is the business, I mean, they're talking about on the, on the TV today, Al Michaels talking about, the firings in college and going to start happening in the pros, it's a bad business, you can win some games and still get fired, I mean, they fired Lovie Smith off of 10-6. It's hard to win 10 games in this league and they'd be fired after that. That's craziness.
What did Marty Schottenheimer get fired off of? 14-2. Marty Schottenheimer got fired.
Yeah. What's the latest you ever had a coach fired on a team that you played or coached on, Z? Because we're talking 9 games in now.
I don't know. Kubiak.
Have you been on a team where a coach got fired this late in the season that you remember?
I don't think so. I've only been on one team as a player. I think got fired during the season. That was Wannstedt.
Oh yeah,
right.
Dave.
That was 5 games into 2020.
It was a little bit longer than that. It was right before Thanksgiving because I remember we went out to we had to go out to Seattle and Frisco, and he was fired before Thanksgiving because he's the one who said, "Yeah, let's go on the West Coast and stay out there for 10 days," which we did. So we had to spend Thanksgiving in downtown San Francisco with the team, now with our families, and he was home. So I was like, really, Dave?
Wow.
But
no one was sad to see him go, huh?
Oh, no, I like Dave. I had no problem with Dave. It's business, though. I mean, you're still friends with somebody. It's not like, they fell off the face of the earth, unless he did you wrong, I guess. But I was always fine with Dave, It is what it is. It's business. That's the NFL, I've been fired 7-8 times. I mean, as a player, and a couple times as a coach, so it is what it is.
And you just pick yourself up and keep on moving. And Kyle, what do you think is going to happen with the trade deadline coming Tuesday? Anything change for you after tonight? Because you had said maybe a win or a loss tonight didn't necessarily correlate with what might or might not happen at the trade deadline. But now that you throw tonight's loss and how bad they were in there, does that change at all? And does the coaching situation, do you think, I mean, the fans want, they're calling for blood right now, but what do you think? What does your gut tell you is going to happen these next 10 days? And really the next, 5 days before the trade deadline and then 10 before the Bills game?
Yeah, I think if I remove my emotion from the game that we just had to be subjected to for 4 hours, I think predictively, I think Ross will probably resist the temptation to make a change off of this game. You'll have an even longer break in just 2 more weeks, where you can go overseas, play your game. If you lose the next 2 games, and you've clinched a losing season, right? Right now it's 7 losses. Mathematically, you could win them all. Mathematically, you could lose 1 more and still have a winning season. But the moment, if you lose the next 2 and it correlates with your bye week and you have 9 losses, so you're going to have a second consecutive losing season, I think predictively, as I try to put myself in Steve's shoes, I think that's where you probably have the best justification to say, I let it play out. I tried to give him a chance to turn it around, but we've officially clinched having a second consecutive losing season to go with all of the other things that happened in the buildup to this decision to make that decision. But with the trade deadline, and it would be so negligent to not take some cash off the books and get some kind of asset. That I understand, like you see some of these trade deadline deals and teams are almost giving players away, right? When you think about the 2 trades that the Patriots did, they were both player and 7th round picks for 6th round picks. They got almost nothing. But for Miami, whether it's Jalen Phillips or Bradley Chubb, if they're going to go the pass rush route, and hopefully Chop Robinson's okay. He was obviously ruled out with a concussion pretty quickly through the protocol. But he does have a little bit of extra time to work his way through protocol and hopefully be back sooner rather than later. We talked yesterday about the finances of both of those guys, and Chubb with the incentive money and Jalen Phillips on a 5th-year option. That's not small cash that you're talking about that a team would be onboarding. So that part of this process, as you project your budget forward and you start talking about the foundation of a new build and what that looks like proactively having more cap flexibility and being able to carry salary cap over, because if you don't use it, you get to bring it over with you into the following year. There's a domino effect here. And to just say, I'm going to keep my hands in my pocket because nobody's giving me a great offer for this player that I think is worth this, I think would be pretty tone deaf. And I'd be surprised if they were so staunch that they didn't make any moves at all.
Do you trust Chris Grier to make these moves at this point? I mean, do you trust anything he does at this point?
He's not spending the picks, right? He's just, if you give him objective of we want you to maximize the trade value. That's one thing Chris has traditionally done pretty well with his tenure with the team, has been to find appropriate value in trades. And I thought he did a great job getting value with the Jalen Ramsey situation based off of how bad that contract was and how bad that relationship was. And there's a whole other conversation about the decision to give the contract reworked in the first place. And that was Chris Greer's had his hand in that.
Looks like the right move, though, watching
the actual trade element of it. I think if there's an objective that's handed down is this is what's best for us. We're reassessing what everything's happening, and we're assessing you on the work that you do at the trade deadline this year as part of your job assessment. I think you can say, we can get through this window. We can make some transactions and then later have the conversation about who should spend the picks and spend the resources, because I think that's a much bigger thing that we need to be worried about at this stage.
And Z, if Tua's worried about not being able to hear with the Ravens fans, just wait till the Bills Mafia comes down here and has 75% of that stadium. And Kyle said this numerous times on the show. That's when owners are inclined to make change, because that's 75% of the Bills, or 60% or whatever it's going to be. They're not going to be buying merch. They're not going to be, they'll be buying alcohol for sure. But, if you think it's bad now, team like the Bills comes in and there's even more fans there on the opposite side, and your home stadium starts turning into, almost like a road atmosphere, like you said earlier, man, that's when it gets real tough.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, if you're a Dolphin fan, your tickets are on StubHub right now. That's you're going to make your money. I mean, especially these Bills guys, you can make your whole season money this week.
Oh yeah.
One game. You jack them up, and it's no different when Dallas goes on the road. People are, Pittsburgh, Philly, all these teams that travel well, they fill a stadium up real fast. But again, like I was in Washington, it was a away trip every week. We had 17 games or, road trips, because, they filled our stands with the visitors.
What do you think about all that, Kyle? I mean, with the shift in the fans in the stadium, and Tua's claiming he can't hear from the Ravens fans, it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, I would hope Stephen Ross is paying attention to the circumstances at Hard Rock Stadium on a nationally televised primetime game as a standalone game, and the only team in town, and your offense can't operate because the visiting fans are too loud for your home team. It's embarrassing. This is to be honest. So, and to your point, I have been down there for one game against the team from Western New York, and those fans, they do show up in bunches. They take over the elbow room. They're down there for a little bit of warm weather because they don't get a lot of nice weather this time of year. They'll enjoy it a whole lot, and they will be loud. And if you thought this one was – now, the only saving grace is that's not a nationally televised game. I think that's the thing that takes the sting for this. This is a showcase game for the league, and the whole league got to see what your circumstances are right now. And I'd be having a hard time going to sleep tonight if I was the owner of the team, knowing that and knowing how this game played itself out.
Z, I want to get your final thoughts in a minute, but there's one more thing I want to ask you before we put a bow on this show is you're in that locker room as a leader, as a player, or as a coach. What are you saying to those guys, especially the younger guys, people who are discouraged? How do you approach that role as a leader, either as a player or a coach, or if it's different, let us know. How are you approaching that with those guys in that room right now?
That's hard. Again, we're losing badly. We're making bad mistakes. We just got, I always would say, hey, look in the mirror. You got to worry about yourself and your job. Do your job like you're taught. Do your job the right way, and don't make mistakes. That's the bottom line. We're making way too many mistakes. I mean, we go out last week against a good defense, a top 5 defense in Atlanta, and we rolled through them. And now we're playing a defense that is at the bottom, and we can't move. We move the ball a little bit, but we can't score because we're turning the ball over. We're making dumb penalties. It's just stupid stuff like that we have to clean up. We keep talking about it, but as a player, you have to check yourself, at the door, because each man's got to do his job, and build from there. I mean, it's like a broken record, but it's all we got. That's all we can hang our hat on right now.
Yeah, and my final thought, I'll start with the final thoughts this week because everybody wants Z to go last. This is how bad it is, Z. People are asking in the chat how you felt when Ricky Williams quit, or did you feel like you had to carry the team with the defense when you had Jay Fiedler back to pass? Quack, quack, quack. Your defense kind of carried. So those are the questions in the chat right now. But my final thought is this. Coaches can only shoulder so much of the blame, right? Coaches don't go out there with a uniform on and suit up. Coaches don't go out there and make plays or not make plays. And at some point, whether you're coached up a certain way or not, no matter what a coaching staff style is, a head coach's style is, players need to go out there and execute. And that is something that the players need to put the onus, I think, on themselves and go out there and perform better because it isn't the coaches wearing those uniforms on the field. Kyle, your final thought?
Yeah, my final thought is this is an unsustainable situation. And I think that's the thing. I go back to what Ian Rappaport said about a week and a half ago, which was change is coming to Miami. It's just a question of what the magnitude of the change is. And I don't know how many more games I can stomach to watch of 6 points and self-inflicted wounds and dumb mistakes and very easily avoidable fundamental football issues. So whether that's the players and their execution, whether that's the messaging, whether that's the focus and where they're investing their time in the building to prepare for games. How many games have the Dolphins played this season where the coaches say, hey, we thought we had a great week of practice and it just didn't show up on the field? And it's happened multiple times this season. I don't know if the Dolphins felt like they had a great week of practice with no practice on Monday and a walkthrough practice on Tuesday, and they probably had a light practice on Wednesday or on, Wednesday they probably did a walkthrough too and didn't really practice there either. So they probably felt like they had a great series of walkthroughs this week before this game on Thursday. But I think there's some back to basics things that they need to really hone in on with this extra time and hope that it shows up for them.
Before we throw it to Z for his final thought, we've seen the glass the whole show. How about that bottle? Is there anything left in there?
No, the bottle, this was the rest of the bottle. So we're going to dust it off. I've got 3 or 4 articles to write after this. So we're going to be putting it to good use for the next hour or so. We finish up our post game because we're done with the squad show. I am not done with my coverage of this game just yet, unfortunately. So,
oh man, sorry to put you through that, Kyle, but you're a pro as always. Great job. Z, your final thought before we wrap?
I'm kind of lost for words because it's like a broken record every week. Got to clean up and play mistake-free football. We have no chance, and you just hope the guys come out after this 10-day break. Take the weekend. Hopefully, Mike gives them the weekend just to get away, clear their minds, come back probably Monday for a light workout, and then Wednesday get ready for the Bills.
Yeah, and one good thing about being an athlete, once you get back on the field for the next game, this all goes away and you get another opportunity, and then you can start to build again if you can get things going. So really the worst night of the year for Dolphins fans. You felt so good after the Atlanta game, and then this team just pulls that rug right out from under you. 28-6 the final. Thank you so much, Kyle. I know you have a lot of great stuff coming up on the channel, Locked On Dolphins podcast. Z in NYCZ this week. Have some fun up there, brother. Do some for us as well. But we're not going to be back until we got 6 more days. Wednesday we'll be back, and it'll be the day after the deadline. So I know Kyle's going to be super busy, and we'll have a trade deadline reaction show and a Bills preview coming up next Wednesday. Until then, thank you so much for being here. We appreciate you. We're live on YouTube. Then we upload. You download Apple, iHeart, Stitcher, Podbean, Spotify, and, of course, Roku over-the-top television. And the Dolphins just did not have it tonight. They looked good early, dominated the first half, except the miscues killed them. And then in the second half, just smoked by the Ravens and the return of Lamar Jackson. And all of a sudden, the Ravens looking like that team that everybody is writing and talking about being the favorite in their division to maybe go on and challenge the Bills and, of course, the Chiefs in the AFC. Don't forget the Patriots as well. So thank you for being here. We'll be here next Wednesday. Keep watching and listening to Kyle day in and day out, Locked On Dolphins podcast, and we will see you in 6 days with another squad show. Until then, keep your game tight and your mind right. Try not to drink too much, or do. At this point, I wouldn't blame you, and neither would these guys. Thank you so much for being here. We'll talk to you soon.